Hi, welcome to WMD, that's Woody's Modelling Diary, and I'm back on my 00 gauge Last Great Project layout and just giving a further update on some scenic work that I'm doing. If you've watched some of my past videos, you'll have seen me talking about scenic subbases, creating rock faces and using acrylic mud, but we've moved on a little bit from there. As you can see, things have progressed a little bit and we're beginning to move away from the sort of flat grass look to get a little bit of vegetation on there to make it all look a little bit more interesting. So what sort of materials am I using for that? Well, I'll take you to the bench and show you what I use. Please excuse the mess on this bench. It's all got a relevance to this video, but this is just some of the stuff I use. For those of you who've been in the hobby a while, you'll no doubt have a box like that with all sorts of stuff you've gathered over the years. And one of the great things if you go to an exhibition is you tend to find the traders with their boxes underneath the main table do tend to have quite a bit of scenic material in there going very cheap. And quite a bit of the stuff I've bought over the years has been second hand, and it does save you quite a bit of money. It's one of those things where traders just seem to not give it away but price it very competitively compared to the new price. And if it's a half-used bag of scatter, it's a half-used bag of scatter. It's not got any wear on it, it's still usable. But anyway, let's get back to the actual modules. You'll have seen that there's a sort of general grass covering over the subbases, and that's made up of a static grass, and it's not just one type of static grass. There's a variety in that particular mix on the layout there. We've got 2mm spring, 2mm dead, 4mm patch, 4mm winter, 2mm autumn green, and we've also got a couple of pinches of this stuff which I got from DMG Electech, who sell a pack of 4 of these. I think you can buy it with an applicator as well, a static grass applicator. But nevertheless, this is quite interesting stuff. It's not a particularly short grass, but it is, I think, about 6mm. But it is quite a nice product to mix in with the Pico or the other makes that you've got. And I know with my own sort of experience of lawns and things, unless you've got an absolute pristine lawn, it's going to be all sorts of colours in there. So that's the static grass. I do tend to apply small areas with this Gauge Master puffer bottle, but obviously these were large areas, which I tend to use a Pico static grass applicator, powered by a 9-volt battery. You just put the grass or the fibres in there, and I've just got an old scalpel blade into the crocodile clip so I can push it into the scenery and turn it on, and theoretically you get that stand-up effect on the grass itself. Now interestingly, you can use obviously PVA type glues to glue the grass on, but electrically I'm not quite sure how much conductivity you get between the sort of surface and the applicator itself. And although it does cost a fair amount, there are some glues available, which is this Pico basing glue for static grass. Woodland Scenics do their own version, Static Tech. When I bought these, and that was probably about 3 years ago, they were about, well, $10.50 for the Pico, $10.25 for the Woodlands. I've yet to use the Woodlands. Pico 1 does work, and I can tell you it does conduct electricity, because when I got some on my fingers, I tried using my tablet, and touching the screen just made the tablet go ballistic. So obviously there was some connectivity between my fingers and the screen, which was beyond what the screen could take. So it does work. So that's my first tip. I'd tend to use that rather than just PVA. And if you want to sort of add additional layers on, because you can get your sort of first layer of grass on and then apply further layering to get a longer effect, Pico layering spray, that's a great product as well. I think that was what, £9.50 when I bought it, probably a little bit more now, but it certainly is a useful product to have. It's a bit like spray mount, if you've ever mounted photographs or posters using that particular product. So that's the static grass. As you'll see, if I manage to spin this around without making anybody dizzy, we have got a fair amount of vegetation growing on that grass. Otherwise it does look a bit like a cultivated lawn, even though it's supposed to depict a wild natural experience. So what am I using for that? Well, there's a variety of products, obviously, and you can buy things such as this, which is climbing vine with flowers, and basically that's just a sort of stringy product with a fine flock and coloured flowers attached. And I have used a little bit of that. If I can just spin you around again, you can see it just there and up there. So that's quite useful, just to add a little bit of colour. If you're looking for other forms of colour, you can buy things like this, which is great for doing sort of daffodils or those poppies, that type of flower. You can cut them down, but they're roughly around the right height for our gauge. You plant them in a small hole. That's a useful product. And again, one or two companies do this. If I can find where I put the rest of the products. Yeah, there's some daffodils type flowers again, from a company, Mini Nature. I think I pronounced that right, but probably not. There's another company out there which is Scenic, and they do these sort of tufts of grass, which is similar to the ones which Pico do. And again, these are sort of self-adhesive. If I can get the box open. Finally got that open. Quite literally all it is like a sticky strip with static grass attached, and you can either get it as a strip like that, or they do these clumps in the Scenic range. Other useful materials, clump foliage from Woodland Scenic. Again, this is I can find where I've opened the actual bag yet. Quite literally a sort of very heavy foam, which is useful for creating small bushes. And if you want to add a little bit of colour, you can get Green Scene do this pack of orange, mauve, yellow and red, which are useful for adding a little bit of colour to things. And I've just found the other Scenic thing, which are these poppy heads, and there are other red flowers out there, and I have discreetly put a couple of those into the actual sort of scenic work there, and they sort of just add that little tinge of colour to it, which makes something a little bit different. And if you're talking about making bushes, well, I tend to use this polyfiber product from Woodland Scenic. Quite literally, it is quite literally just a fibre, almost like a stuffing material. If any of you are into aquariums and fish keeping, it's very similar to some of the stuff you can get to put into filters, but obviously this is green. you could use the filter stuff, but you'd have to dye it green. But quite literally, it just, you cut it and you can create your bushes with that, and I'll show you how I do that later on. You can then glue it and cover it with sort of products like this from Knock, which is a leaf foliage pack of materials. But I tend to also use Woodland Scenic's fine turf and coarse turf, which I can also use as a ground cover sort of weed. And again, if you, going back to this, just here, that's that sort of coarse turf, which just gives a nice little effect of sort of those low-lying weeds which are quite clumpy in nature. Excuse the movements. Right, so we'll put those out of the way. I also tend to use, this was a bag of stuff I picked up at a show. I think I paid £1 for that, which is another type of coarse foam stuff. I do tend to sometimes just use old bags of flock. If people remember the days when the closest you could get to sort of a grass type material was dyed sawdust, and quite literally, and then just put it on there, you can see it's just like a very fine sawdust. But that's quite handy for covering small bushes. And again, you can use some of, I've got some of the old Jarvis products, which were sort of early form of static grass. So these were actual fibres, and again you can apply those to the bush, and I'll show you how I do that in a moment. So there you are. That's just some of the materials. No doubt you've got your own favourites, or you may develop your own techniques in the future. But always worth having a look at what's underneath the traders' benches. You can pick up some bargains there. And just one quick thing, when I'm just going back to the static grass, I just tend to plonk it in a, well, this is an old yoghurt carton, and I just tend to drop it in there with a whole host of other bits and pieces. You get the occasional white bit, but you can pick that out once the glue's dried. If you're a little bit more clean in the ways in which you operate than I am, you can obviously avoid getting any dirt in there, but it does work for me. So that's where I tend to mix up my various lengths and shades of grass, so that it's sort of a good mix. Right, I'm just going to prepare a couple of bits, and we'll have a look at how we build the bush. I know I keep going on about the scenic subbases, but this is another advantage of them. You can just remove it, put it somewhere where it's more convenient to work on. And what I'm going to be doing is just disguising this edge, which is the baseboard edge, where it matches up to some other grass, which is slightly different. So what I'm doing is just pretending that there's a sort of field boundary of a overgrown type hedge there. So I'm going to use some of this Woodland's polyfiber material, and we'll just take a small amount, if I can get that into the picture. And quite literally what we're going to do is glue it there, and using some PVA glue, and rather than try and mess around with the big bottle, what I tend to do is just put it into a small, this is an old photographic film container, which means if you spill it, you're not spilling a whole host of white glue over the place, and it's just a bit more convenient to hold. So all I'm going to do is just quite literally, I'm not being too precise about it, and don't worry, there is static grass plonked on there before, but that will all form part of the bond. So that's that done. I'm just going to put the polyfiber on there. I'm just going to make sure it overlaps the edge a little bit just to hide the edge of the scenic base. And then all I'm going to do is just dab glue on top of it. And again, don't worry about being too precise or anything. Just want a general good covering. Then I'm going to use some of this Woodland Scenic fine turf over the top. And to avoid wasting products, because I do hate wasting products, I'm just going to hold this carton underneath so I can make sure we don't create a mess and reuse the product. And that's all I'm doing, just sprinkling that on. And to give it a little bit of variety, I'm just going to use a little bit of this old Jarvis scatter or fibre type material, and just quite literally get some of it to separate out. That's it. And you've got a bush which looks like it's got a little bit of variety in the colour to it. And again, we'll just continue with the bush creation. It's just a case of getting a fair old dollop of white PVA glue on there. I'm just taking a little bit more of this polyfiber. And then a little bit more glue over the top. And what this stuff will do is it tends to filtrate through the fibres anyway. It all looks a bit of a mess at the moment, but as you can see, it does come together. And of course, any mess isn't going on the layout. It's going on the easy to clean floor, and if I was really clever, I'd have a sheet of newspaper underneath, but I haven't. Probably that's something I need to think about for another time. There we go. This time I'm going to use a slightly lighter shade of this fibre stuff. It's just a case of scattering it out over there. So I'm going to be a little bit devilish here and use a little bit of colour from that bag of orange, red and yellow and mauve material which I showed you earlier. Quite literally just dropping a little bit on there, and again the glue will be soaking through the previously applied material and it will just grab that as well. And it just gives a little bit of colour. I've got no idea about the horticultural side of this thing, so this is probably some form of zombie type plant which never would exist in natural life, but this is my model railway, so it's okay. There you have it. So that's sort of creating the bush, and I think it's reasonably easy to do. It does give you some effect, and I think the main thing to remember with nature is 50 shades of green, and don't try and just create one tone of green on your layouts. Make it a little bit different and add all these sorts of different colours and textures, and it may not pass the scrutiny of somebody into horticultural, but I think you'll find that people do take notice and appreciate what you're doing with it. So I hope that's been of interest and of use, and thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you again. You take care of yourselves. Bye.